Good afternoon, members. This afternoon is a busy one. I now declare that the fifth meeting of the Bills Committee on Employment Amendment Bill 2014 it will be held, and we've formed a quorum. And may I now invite the administration team in, please. Good afternoon, Mr. Ho. And I'm not going to introduce the government representatives one by one. Welcome to you all. Before the meeting, let's first discuss the topics covered. Now, members have expressed a number of comments on 3 policy areas. If you want to do that again, please be succinct. The number of PL days, 3, 5, or 7 days or more. This we have been talking a lot. Now, the percentage of PL leave, 4/5 or full pay, and will the employment protection afforded to ML be applied to PL as well? Now, we've covered these three topics quite substantially. So if you want to raise that again, please be succinct. Now, there are 2 papers that we have to discuss. First, the simpler one. And the first is one from the Law Society of Hong Kong, paper number CB bracket 21542 stroke 1314 bracket 01. And the government's response is paper number CB 21709 stroke 1314 stroke, or rather bracket 02. There are 6 points raised by the Law Society, as mentioned last time. Let me go through them one by one. Definition of paternity leave. The Law Society believes that the way that paternity leave is drafted is not very similar to that for ML. So, and we said that the proposed definition, our definition, is clear and concise, and it has the same structure as the existing definition for other leave. Now, secondly, the Law Society believes that the term father should be provided for under the bill with reference to the Parent and Child Ordinance. But we've looked at the PNCO. A man shall be presumed to be the father of a child if he was married to the mother of the child, or he has been registered as the father of the child on the child's birth certificate. Under our proposal, if we follow the definition of the PNCO, then that would exclude fathers who are not married to the mothers of the child, especially when the child is not yet born. So he would not be entitled to the PEL. So that goes against our policy intent. So that's why we think that under our bill, that approach or definition under the PNCO should not be adopted. We think that should not be adopted. Notification requirement. The Law Society is of the view that the 3 months notice period should be measured to the first day of PL instead of the expected confinement date as suggested in our bill. Our view is this. The male employee may not be able to know well in advance when he will take that leave. When he gives that 3 months notice, he will not be in a position to say when he will take that leave. So if we are asking him to give 3 months notice, he will not be very well aware of when he should give that notice. So that is why we state that the 3 months notice period should be measured against the expected date of confinement, because in the early days of pregnancy, the expected date of confinement will be known, and that gives a certain certainty for both the employer and employee. And I think that gives convenience and clarity to both the employer and employee. Fourthly, the Law Society is of the view that when an employee asks for a PL from his employer, the present requirement is that he should give an oral notice, and that should suffice. And the Law Society believes that a written statement should be given. And under our bill, the employee or the male employee needs only to give a verbal notice, and a written statement is not needed unless the written statement is required by the employer. I think that is similar to what we are having for other holidays, like the annual leave. We don't need the employee to submit a written statement, and the same for maternity leave. The female or pregnant female employee only needs to give notice verbally to the employer, and that is already good enough, unless the employer asks the female employee to give a medical certificate to prove that she is pregnant. And we believe that our proposal under the bill is consistent with other requirements under the EO. Now, I will skip point 5 and I'll go to point 6 first. The proposed repeal of the Chinese tax for 醫院、療養院及流產院登記條例 is wrong, as there is no such Chinese tax in the existing Section 33(6)(a) of EO. But indeed, there is such a tax in the existing ordinance. Now, on point 5, I'll defer to the colleague from the DOJ to explain. As I said in the last meeting, the Law Society is of the view that the Section 15H3 and 14.3b are different in their constructions, and as in our written response. And I think the changes has no bearing on the meaning of the clauses or the sections concerned. Lee Cheuk-yan, is it that you want to raise questions on this paper? Mr. Pun Xiaoping, I'll give you 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. The government has given a written response to the Law Society's suggestions. I would like to follow up. Will we be giving this response to the Law Society? They may have other views or further views on your response. And say, for example, on the calculation of the average daily wages, there are differences in the drafting, but the government's view is that, in effect, the two different drafting methods carry the same meaning. So would you be writing to the Law Society on your response? Yes, we can forward the document to the Law Society. Legal advisor, anything from you on Mr. Pan's view about the calculation of the average daily wages? I agree that the way it is drafted this time differs from that in the past. It is really an improvement in the drafting. The only question is why such a change is done here in this section for this particular bill and not in other pieces of legislation. Would you be making changes to the other sections in the EO on this point? Well, we are just making an amendment to the PL-related provisions because the same calculation method is included in other types of benefits, annual leave, ML, and sick leave, and so on. There are similar drafting for these other benefits. We don't plan to amend all other sections at one go this time. Well, if the definition here is clearer, then why don't you consider doing it at one go? So if you make all the amendments at one go, then we will not raise any more questions or doubts. Mr. Tommy Chang. Chairman, I am asking a question not related to the paper, but rather I watched something on television, and Matthew Cheung, it seems, to be saying that if there are committee stage amendments to the bill, then the government will withdraw the bill. They would take it back to the LAB for study again. Well, it seems that there are reports on television. Is this the government stance? Now, actually, in the next item, we're going to discuss this point because there is this other paper on prepared by the government on how to deal with amendments. Chairman, I understand that I have to leave by 3 p.m. I have to go to Tsim Sha Tsui, and we will be having a meeting with the industry on shop extensions together with the sector and Mr. Vincent Fang.
So the administration, you can answer Mr. Cheung's question first. As mentioned in the document, now we have heard members' views in the Bills Committee, and we've heard your views on days of leave and wage pay, and if the difference with the LAB is substantial, as in the past, we will go back to the LAB for discussion. Now, the part that hasn't been answered is, now if you take it back for discussion and you reach a consensus and then you come back, now that's different. Now, no, you want full pay for people want full pay instead of 4/5. Now the difference is substantial. Now, are you? Now, please answer the question directly. Now we will go back to LAB for discussion, and then we will resume the legislation process, because normally a bill is discussed in the Bills Committee. If there are no particular issues, we will resume second reading. But if there is a major amendment, then before resumption of second reading, we'll go back to the LAB and try to get a consensus. I understand there are two steps that you can adopt. First, you let it pass. We can pass it, then it passes. And the other way is after second reading, we can see if the amendments pass. Maybe none of the amendments pass, and then if they pass, you can withdraw the bill before the third reading. Now, you seem to be saying that if members submit committee stage amendments or CSAs, then you will stop the examination or scrutiny, then you will take the CSAs to LAB for consensus. If there's consensus, you will make the amendments. Well, if not, I won't ask you what you will do. I have a good idea of what, I want to get a good idea of what you would do. Any response, Mr. Hui? None. Mr. N. Chan? Now, Mr. Hui seems to be saying, now if there is some minor amendment, if there is some change in wording that will be amended after clarification, then you will accept that. But if it's something major, say if 3 days becomes 2 days, then you have to take it back to LAB, let them know, and then let them discuss first before you take it back to LegCo. It doesn't mean that you will withdraw upon any amendment, right? That's true. If the amendment is just technical, there is no major department from the consensus of LAB, then we may not need to go back to LAB for discussion. But if, as mentioned earlier, if the amendment is a major departure from the LAB's consensus, then we will go back to the LAB for a consensus. Now, Chairman, now we have discussed the policies and outline of the bill many times, and we are not yet the scrutiny stage. When do we expect to go into scrutiny? I don't want to affect affect the pace, but I want you to air your views on the policies in a concise manner today. If we do not have time to go to scrutiny this meeting, we will definitely do that next time. I support your decision, Chairman. Now, I also like to ask the legal advisor. Just now, Mr. Hui said if the Bills Committee or other LegCo members come up with CSA, then it's possible that the government may take the more major CSAs back to the LAB for discussion. Now, I'd like to ask, now, when the Bills Committee has completed scrutiny, but before the second reading resumes, now, is there any limit to the length of time by which you can extend that interval? Now, on the resumption of second reading process, now, according to the rules of procedure, there is no limit on the date of second reading resumption after scrutiny. It depends on the government, what they think is appropriate. Now, in the past, there were bills that were very controversial, so second reading was not resumed. It depends on when the administration serves notice to LegCo. Now, okay, on the Law Society's document, we have no further questions, and now we come to the other document, that's CB2 1709 1314/01. Will the administration take us through the document, please, Mr. Hui? Now, thank you. Last time, the Bills Committee raised two issues relating to the bill, and we now have a written response. First, on the long title and 15D2B, it says that the PL is going to be not less than not more than 3 days and up to 3 days now. So the leave can be taken in the period of 4 weeks before the birth and 10 weeks after. Now, and if he has served for the required period, he can take the PL. Now, he may not be able to enjoy all 3 days, and that's on some special situations. That is, if the employee joins the company only about 6 weeks after the leave. Now he may have not have, so he has not completed the 4 weeks leave. Now he may have joined the company, and then there are 4 weeks, and then he fulfills the requirement of a continuous contract, and he has to take the leave within 10 weeks from the baby's delivery. Now, if he establishes the continuous contract and at a late time, then he may only get 1 or 2 days leave. Then the bill says that in that case, he will have leave not more than 3 days. So it doesn't mean that the employer can offer less than 3 days leave should the employer be entitled to it. Also, the members asked that if members raise some amendments, does the government have to consult the LAB again? Now, we replied in the written response that Hong Kong is different from other places of the world in some respects. For instance, in some other countries, they may offer maternity leave or paternity leave. In that case, it's often paid for by Social Security, and in those cases, the employer and employee pay for such Social Security. So if you take longer leave, they are paid for by both sides. In Hong Kong, it's different. All of the paternity leave is paid for by the employer. So we need in Hong Kong a mechanism to strike a balance between the aspirations of the employee and the affordability of the employer. We have the LAB mechanism. It has had a long history. In the past, all important labor legislation and policies went through the LAB for a consensus, and a balance was struck between the interests of employer and employee. Now, as for the PL legislation, the LAB had reached agreement after a long discussion, and both sides gave some and took some, and so as in other parts of the world, very often the two sides do not agree exactly, but they were eventually to reach agreement, and they see that 3 days leave and 4/5 pay rate is agreeable. Now the Bills Committee met the deputations, and they had different views. Some employees, deputations felt it's not enough, but some employers felt it's too much. So the LAB has reached agreement, and it's agreed that there will be a review in 1 year's time. So we think that this is valuable, and we should attach importance to that. And it's not just the PL legislation. In the past, when we had bills amending labor legislation, members from time to time proposed amendments, and as in the past, if there are amendments that depart from the agreement reached by LAB, we'll go back to the LAB, consult the LAB, and pass the members' views to LAB, so that they understand your views, and we try to convince both sides to reach agreement. And thereafter, we will take the bill back for resumption of second reading, and it will be voted upon in LegCo in Council. This is nothing new. This has been past practice. The LAB is an important platform. It represents the employees, that is registered trade unions, and also the employers, that is the 5 major trade associations in Hong Kong. They are broadly representative of the business sector. So we hope to follow this mechanism. Now, if in the BC stage we hear some views, and if they are warranted, then we'll take it back to the LAB. Lee Cheuk-yan, 4 minutes, please. First, I think the administration's response is really arbitrary. Now, it says basically that if the BC has amendments, then you say you will consult the LAB, you will seek LAB's advice, but if there's no consensus or agreement at LAB, then you might not even come back, or you can withdraw upon second reading. Now, Now, you didn't mention this. Now, after second reading, if we propose amendments, do you withdraw the bill and take it back to LAB? So this means no respect to the scrutiny process of the LegCo and its executive hegemony, and you can withdraw it whenever you like. Now, members have the right to amend, and the council has the right to vote and pass the bill, and yet you try to control the entire bill. So will you withdraw the bill if there are amendments after the second reading? Mr. Hui, I'd like to stress once again, this PL is not a unique approach. In the past, we have always followed this.
I've tolerated for so many years already. My question is, if there are amendments only after the second reading, would you be withdrawing the bill? Well, this is a very specific question. Please answer directly. Will you withdraw the bill after, when there are amendments after the second reading? As in the past, if the amendments deviate greatly from the LAB's consensus, we must go back to the LAB for discussion before we resume the second reading. Well, it depends on which stage we are in. Now, if we say that we notify that we will be resuming the second reading, and we see that there are amendments which deviate substantially from the LAB's consensus, then we will go back to the LAB first. Well, so it means that they're going to withdraw the bill. So that means, in effect, that any proposals forwarded by the LAB and the Labour Department, LegCo members are not allowed to make amendments on those proposals. You are showing total disrespect for the LegCo members' amendments. Are you trying to have the LAB's consensus overriding the LegCo? If that is the case, why don't you put it down categorically that no amendment is allowed? Because this is the result that you will be getting at. Why don't you say outright that this bill is not subject to any amendment by LegCo? Well, don't misunderstand us. We're not saying that we are withdrawing the bill. Well, I am asking you, after the second reading, there are amendments. In many bills in the past, we've done that before. So please answer my question. Now, after the second reading, if there are CSAs, so would you be withdrawing the bill? Well, yes or no, just two answers. At any stage whatsoever, before we have resumed the second reading, and we know of members' views, we would be channeling these views to the LAB before we take the bill back here for resumption of second reading. Now, if after the second reading there are amendments, you would not be taking those back to the LAB. No withdrawal, is that right? Okay, if we give a notice that there will be a resumption of second reading, and then we receive your notifications. Now, all amendments will be moved before the second reading. Now, if we learn that there are views which deviate substantially from the LAB's views, then we will go back to the LAB first. Well, Chairman, let me put it this way. If we have the second reading, and then there are amendments, and then they are going back to the LAB again, then that means that they are withdrawing it, in effect. Well, just to answer me in one or two words, will you or will you not withdraw the bill? Chairman, well, let me make it clear. We are not withdrawing the bill. It's just that we will not be resuming the second reading for the time being. Well, that's in effect withdrawal, I would say. Mr. Tang Ka-piu. Well, you may say it's withdrawal or freezing the bill. It's the same thing to me. Now, you are really putting the electrical on the spot here. I understand that you said that you would respect the LAB's decisions. That's all right. Now, at labor issues, it's very often that the administration will help out the employees when there is really great public outcry. Now, electrical members are representatives of the community. So we all know that there are 13 votes in the LAB. If the Commissioner for Labour as the chairman of the LB buys into the idea of a 5 days PL, then, well, we can get a decision quickly because employees will not be objecting you on that suggestion. Secondly, is there a deadline for your consultation with the LAB? Third, I don't see you paying real efforts here. The chairman outlined 3 major policy issues of concern to us. I don't see you paying real efforts in coming up with middle-of-the-ground positions. Now, if you don't want us to move CSAs, please show that you are really responding to our requests. You are doing something, but I don't see efforts in that regard. So you are not answering any of our requests in those 3 areas, Chairman. As what the paper said, if we go back to the LAB for discussion, well, would there be a time limit for their discussions? We hope very much that the 2 sides can reach some form of consensus on the views that we present to them, members' views that we present to them. I don't want to set a deadline here because that will not help in forging a consensus. But what I can undertake that is we will do our utmost to consult the LAB on the views you expressed. Now, the chairman said that in the next meeting, we will go to a clause-by-clause scrutiny. So in the interim period, would you be doing some lobbying work? Will you be working something out to convince us? Have you sought advice from your superior? Well, we've been doing our lobbying work all along. And we hope that after the discussion at the LAB, and we will see what kind of consensus we can forge, and then we will discuss again with the members to see how to further continue with our scrutiny of the bill. Are you encouraging us to give you a written responses on our proposed amendments? Well, that's not necessary. We've heard your views. The chairman said, say, for example, about something about the calculation of average daily wages. Should that be standardized across the entire ordinance? And then for those views, we would channel them to the LAB. It's not the case that we would consult the LB when you have only written in your views. Now, next time maybe we would ask someone more senior from the government to explain the issues to us. Mr. Kwok Wai Kang, I must raise a question after having heard what Mr. Hui said, that we have first meeting on the 4th of April, and then we have several meetings in May. And today is the 9th of June. Well, in the previous meetings, we have raised our views. And Mr. Hui said that before we write in our written views, you will be consulting the LAB. So in the interim period, in the period before today's meetings, have you taken our views to the LAB? When is the next meeting of the LAB? Is the government dragging your feet? If you haven't consulted LAB on our views, now how much longer do you plan to procrastinate on taking it to the LAB? Now, in paragraph 7, it says out clearly that the number of PL days and the amount of PL pay are the core components of the bill. So whatever changes to be made, the proposals have to be taken back to the LAB. That's very clear. Now, from the labor sector, of course, I hope that the number of leave days can be increased. Well, at the very least, it should be aligned with that for the civil servants, i.e. 5 days. Now, apart from the number of PL days and the amount of PL pay, which are the core components, does it mean that for the other non-core components, the proposals or the provisions can be changed, including the employment protection and also the notice period, and also paragraph 8 of the Law Society. It raised a good point, and it says that the notice period notification requirement should be changed to the effect that the 3 months notice period, it should be measured to the first day of PL instead of the expected date of confinement. I think that's a very reasonable request. That's a non-core element. Does it mean that it can be changed? Will the government be proactive in changing it? Mr. Hui. We hope that after the Bills Committee has scrutinized the bill and we have heard all your views, we will then consult the LAB. Now, as regards which items we would be consulting the LAB, we would consult, of course, the LAB on the core components, but it's very difficult for us to define which are the core and non-core components. Now, there are views that the number of PL days should be increased to 7, or there should be full pay. Then these suggestions have to be taken back to the LAB. Now, if we are really to consult the LAB on these core elements, we might as well consult them on any changes to the non-core components as well. Now, Mr. Kwok mentioned about the notification requirement, whether it should be calculated or measured to the first day of PL or the first day or the expected date of confinement. We will also be consulting the LAB on which is the better option. Our present view is that the expected date of confinement should be adopted for the measurement, because that would be very clear. I mean, that expected date, and we think it's better to go for that option. Any other member having any questions? If not, Mr. Kwok, 3 minutes for you. Mr. Hui. Well, you would be really creating a lot of confusion by doing the way you suggested. You said that after the Bills Committee has scrutinized the bill, you would then take the views back to the LAB. Now you're in effect forcing us to move the amendments now because, in the course of our discussions, we are definitely going to raise some amendments. And I would see that the core components, the number can be limited, but for other non-core components, they may not be limited in number. Now, with such unclear definition, how can we give you our views? You should be very clear about which provisions are really the core components. So, do you want us to raise amendments or not. You have sounded so obscure. It seems that there is no room for us to move amendments. What do you want us to do, Mr. Hui? I'm not. Of course, we're not forcing members to raise amendments. It's a consensus of the LAB has not been easy to come by, and what we want to do is to implement it as soon as possible, and then we can do a review 1 year after the implementation. This is our objective. But of course, I do respect members' right to raise amendments, and we have due respect for members' opinions. So that's why I said that after hearing members' views at the Bills Committee here, then we will go back to the LAB. And I've heard loud and clear that members will raise amendments, in particular on the number of PL days. I will reflect those to the LAB. Well, they may not, your views may not necessarily be amendments to the bill, but rather views in general. There may be views which are more technical in nature. And there are views which will serve to further improve the bill. So we will consult the LAB on all your views at one go. First round, any other member?
Second round. I'd just like to follow up. Just now, Mr. Hui said the LAB will discuss the 3 days and 4/5, and it's agreed that after the bill has been implemented for 1 year, they will review the implementation. Now, so you will have a review after 1 year. Now, is there something more specific? Is there are there other possibilities other than number of days and the amount of pay? Or how about penalty and so on? Now, the LAB did not discuss the scope of the review. Close to 1 year after implementation, we will discuss and review. Bu Siu Keng, any follow-up question? So it's not very meaningful. Now, you may make 3 days. You can make that 2 days and decrease the amount of pay. Now, I'd like to know, when you discuss at LAB, was there a consensus on taking it forward or further expansion? Because you already had some views on sickness leave and injuries and so on. Now, the LAB has not set the scope of the review or the items for review, but it merely said that there will be a review after 1 year of implementation. Lee Cheuk-yan, 3 minutes, please. Second round. I'd like to go back to the issue of not less than 3 days, but you haven't explained one thing. The wording right now, you said, now you said that there wouldn't be pay in lieu of leave, but you now say there can be less than 3 days. Now, the bill allows for 3 days leave, but this is an employee's right, but we will not force the employee to take all 3 days of PL. it's up to him. If he serves notice, the employer has to give him the 3 days leave. If he wants to take PL, the employer must allow him. So if he proposes 1 day, if the employer forces him to propose 1 or 2 days, then is that what will happen? Now, there is no safeguard for the employee. So the employer says, just take 1 day's leave, not 3 days. So that might be the outcome because you didn't stipulate 3 days. Now, the employment ordinance stipulations have to be respected. The employee, but people might not respect that because it can be less than 3 days. So the employer goes for less than 3 days. Now, under employment ordinance, if the employer unreasonably dismisses the employee, he has to make compensation. If that is, if the 3 days are not offered. But if we make an amendment, will you withdraw it? So, is this an area where you will not withdraw the bill? We never said that we will withdraw the bill. So, if I propose amendment here, will you take it back to LAB? Now, I think just now you might have stepped out of the room, but I answered other members saying that since we hear different views from the BC members, like increasing the employees' protection, some say increase the period. Now, we will take all these back to the LAB for discussion. Now, if members feel that there's room for discussion, as long as you propose them, we will take them back to LAB for discussion. Now, just now members asked what are the core amendments that you will take back to LAB. And now you say that whether it's core or not, you will take the amendments back to LAB. Now, for the record, is it that you will never withdraw the bill? What I hear is that any alteration, whether it's core or not, you will be taken back to LAB. Is that right? Secondly, will you not withdraw the bill under whatever circumstances? There are 2 questions. Firstly, if the alteration is non-core or merely technical, then we don't have to go back to LAB. But if some of the changes are core in nature, we will go back to LAB. And when when we go back to LAB, all the proposed changes will be taken back to LAB, whether they are core or not, because we respect the views of the committee. We will report them to the LAB. So whether the changes are core or not, we will not draw a clear line. They will all be taken back to LAB. So if there is a change to a core matter, then everything will be taken back to LAB. But if just some non-core or technical change, then you will not take it back to LAB and you will not withdraw the bill. Okay, Lee Cheuk Yan? Now, I don't know what they mean by core or non-core. Now, not less than 3 days, for instance. Now, if I amend it to 3 days, but without the wording not less than, then maybe that's core. And I'm going to ask him whether it's core or not. Well, secondly, we have offered our recommendations, so they are going to take everything back to LAB anyway. So he seems to be saying you can air your views and then we go back to LegCo. So you will go back to LegCo whether we propose amendments? Now, when the Bills Committee completes scrutiny, we will reach a decision. At this stage, I cannot answer whether we will or not, because I dare not offer views right now. Because when we offer views, you will go back to LegCo. So you are playing hide and seek with me. Why is the administration doing that? Are we playing hide and seek, Mr. Chairman? Now, I ask, are you going back to LAB? He says, no, we will wait for the scrutiny to be completed. Now, if there are no amendments after scrutiny, you won't go back to LAB. And then if there are amendments after second reading, they will go back to LegCo. So the administration is playing games with LegCo. This is a very poor attitude. I propose this. We have to discuss this in the House Committee, because I don't know how we can continue playing hide and seek. Then this matter can be discussed at the level of Chief Secretary for Administration. The House Committee Chairman can discuss with her after discussion at a House Committee. Now, you are kind of filibustering. Mr. Hui, any response? Now, at the last meeting of the Bills Committee, we heard clearly two members said that they would propose amendments. We heard that clearly. I also like to supplement that the government is not trying to filibuster as in the past. When employee welfare is affected, we hear views at the Bills Committee and then we go back to LAB. For instance, minimum wage. During the scrutiny period of minimum wage, we heard different views from members. For instance, if students come back for internship, well, I'm more familiar than you. Please don't go into that. Now, before second reading, where there is consensus, where the LAB has consensus, then we propose amendment ourselves. And another example is more recent one. That is the on wages owed upon bankruptcy, on the companies winding up. Now, first it's about the leave not yet taken. Now, well, in those days there were cases where you didn't take it back to LAB. Now, we made the amendments, and then when we went to the Bills Committee, then the members said that if you provide for 1 year's annual leave, that's not enough. So we went back to LegCo, and so we reached the agreement was
咗法案委員會意見，然後翻去勞顧會達成共識咧，政府自己亦都主動提出個修訂，咁亦都最後嗰個法案咧，亦都喺立法會度得到通過咯。咁其實呢啲例子我哋睇到咧，就係話我哋過往一向都係咁樣做，我哋咧亦都係希望可以今次可以喺個勞顧會裏面咧，就住議員嘅修訂咧，盡量可以就住一啲大家關注嘅事項咧達成共識。如果能夠達成到共識嘅，政府希望就可以繼續提出就由政府提出修訂啦，咁然後就付諸表決。
好得，唔該晒。就頭先咧就李卓人議員同埋其他委員提出關於不少於3日嗰個問題呢，我哋嘅法律顧問可能有些少意見，我哋聽聽法律顧問講呢個意見先啦，唔該。
多謝主席。我留意到咧，就議員關注嗰個不少於3日嗰個草擬方式咧，其實除咗係話對於究竟嗰個僱員咧，佢即係可以攞到幾多日嘅假期有關注之外咧，其實仲係另外一個關注咧，就係話僱員僱主之間會唔會有一個以薪代價嘅問題？咁我留意到喺現行嘅僱傭條例裏邊第41條大 E 咧，其實就住嗰個年假嘅放取咧，都會有一個限制咧，就係即係除咗有一啲特別，譬如話喺僱傭合約終結嘅時候。
When unless in special circumstances the payment of wages in lieu of leave is normally not allowed. So would the government introduce similar wording into the PL legislation? Now, we heard two sides. Some said that there should not be payment of wages in lieu of leave. So that's what some of the deputation said. But other members said that one should be able to substitute wages in lieu of leave if the employer and employee agree. Now, if this matter is taken back to LAB, we will tell the LAB the views on both sides and listen to how they decide. So there is no decision yet. Mr. Hui? Our view is that the right to take paternity leave is up to the employee. So it's, the wording is a bit different from that of annual leave. The reason is that for annual leave or other statutory holiday, it's actually the holiday is arranged by the employer, whether the leave is 7 days or on what days is actually decided ultimately by the employer. But PL is a bit different from annual leave because PL is for the personal needs of the employee. It's not for the employer to decide unilaterally which days it will fall on.
So the way it is drafted is different from other leave under the employment ordinance. Is really a leave taken on the initiative of the employee. As long as he has given sufficient notice, he can determine the date on which to take leave, and the employer is obliged to grant that leave. So that's different. So the aim is really to protect employee so that he can take the leave day as he wishes, and it's not for the employer to decide on the date of leave. Mr. Raymond Chen, first round, 4 minutes. I would like to be a bit clearer on the procedures, because the more I hear, the more confused I get. Now, if there are proposed changes to the core components of the bill, then the second reading will be suspended or frozen or whatever you call it until the day when LB forges a consensus. Then the legislative process will be re-triggered again. But today I heard that after the Bills Committee has completed its work, and I'm sure that many of the opinions have to do with the core components, then the administration has to go back to the LAB for discussion. And this is it different from the first scenario I mentioned? Now, say if we have another meeting and we finish our work, and then the opinions of these bills will be taken back to the LAB, and does it mean that you would continue scheduling for the second reading of the bill, or should we wait until you've consulted the LAB before that process is triggered? Well, we will first consult the LAB, and then they have reached a consensus, and then we will be based on the rules of procedure, give notice on a resumption of second reading. So after we finish our work here at the Bills Committee, the administration will have the right to decide on the way forward. Is that right? Well, what I heard is that whatever we do, then everything will go back to the LAB. As I said in the last meeting, 2 members stated clearly that they would move CSAs. In that case, we have to consult the LAB. After we are finished with the work here at the Bills Committee, members, there may be still be members who will be moving amendments. Doesn't mean that you have to go to 2 rounds of consultation with LAB. Yes, that may be possible. Now, say if members, after the work of the Bills Committee has finished, raise views which are unheard of during this Bills Committee, we may have to go back to the LAB. But I don't want to say at too early a stage what we will do. Now, if the amendment is going to be a technical in nature, we might not have to go back to the LAB. So, Assistant Commissioner, how long does the process will take? Well, it's difficult for me to envisage because we haven't heard all the views expressed by members at the Bills Committee. So at this juncture, I can't say for sure how long the process will take. Mr. Raymond Chan, no more from you. Mr. Lee Chuk-yan, 3 minutes. I think he is holding us hosted. I mean, they are holding those who are about to take PL as hostage. I am so sad to see that the government is really filibustering with the help of the LAB and undermining the right of those who need the PL leave or PL benefits. What is the last session of the Council? The 9th of July? No sitting on the 16th. So let's try to count back and take a pragmatic approach. So if we look at the calendar, by when should we be finishing all the scrutiny work? And then members can decide, perhaps say in middle of June, to decide whether to move CSAs. And then up to the end of June, there will be 2 more weeks. My question for the Labour Department. We all know who the chairman of the LAB is the Commission for Labour. I think we've expressed almost all our views, and we've been very clear. So it will not be difficult for us to say spend the next 3 days in collating all our opinions, and then we will proceed with the clause-by-clause scrutiny. And then the government official can take all these views back to the LAB. And then you can go proceed with your second reading. And whether we would move amendments would depend on whether the Labour Department will do amendments itself. Do you understand my timetable, Chairman? Administration, if you are concerned about fathers who want to take PL, you must finish all the LAB procedures within 2 weeks. Is that feasible? Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Hui, if we want to resume the second reading on the 9th of July, we must, at the middle of this month, get back to the House Committee and then consult the chairman of the House Committee before we can have a second reading on the 9th of July. Say if in the middle of June we can notify that the House Committee chairman that we will resume the second reading on the 9th of July. Now, because the views are so many and diversified, I don't believe that they can deal with all these views within one meeting. And then actually many members are on an overseas, attending an overseas conference. Mr. Lee Chak-yan, the next meeting for the Bills Committee is slated for the 25th of June. And then the meeting after that, 8th of July. So in reality, we have great difficulties in presenting the bill on the 9th of July. Members, any other questions? All right, let's move ahead with the scrutiny process. Let's go to the clause-by-clause scrutiny. Members, it's not that once we start the clause-by-clause scrutiny, you are not allowed to raise questions on policy issues. You are still allowed to do that. And if we are finished by this clause-by-clause scrutiny, you can still have the chance to raise questions on policy. Well, it's impossible for us to get the second reading on the 9th of July. So shall we present all our amendments by the 25th of June, and then they have the whole summer vacation to work on them? All right, who from the administration to take us through these clause-by-clause scrutiny of the bill? Well, let me try to clarify the way I'm going to do it. Shall we do the Chinese and English versions simultaneously? And we can first look at the Chinese version and then the corresponding provision in the English version. So they should go side by side. And that way, I think we should be able to proceed more speedily. And then we can have thorough discussions in both the Chinese and English versions. I'll defer to Ms. Cheng to take us through the clause-by-clause scrutiny of the bill. Thank you, Chairman. Let's look at the long title. Is to amend the Employment Ordinance to provide for a male employee's entitlement in respect of the birth of a child of the employee to paternity leave of up to 3 days and paternity leave at a daily rate of 4/5 of the employee's average daily wages, and to make related and other minor amendments. Any questions? So you can take us through the English version as well, please.
A bill to amend the Employment Ordinance to provide for a male employee's entitlement in respect of the birth of a child of the employee to paternity leave of up to 3 days and paternity leave pay at a daily rate of 4/5 of the employee's average daily wages, and to make related and other minor amendments.
Okay. 嗱，其實即係求
A number of members have raised questions on this long title. Can you reconsider again? Up to 3 days. This term is very puzzling in the Chinese and also both the English versions. Can you cross out the words up to and 最多 in Chinese? So just make it 3 days. Mr. Kwok Wai Kang. I think the title is very important. In labor laws, mostly a basic line is drawn up, or the minimum benefit is drawn up. And people like Dr. N. Zhang will be giving more than the basics. So does it mean that under this long title, you will be breaching the law if you give more than 3 days? Because you should be saying at least 3 days here. Mr. Hui or anyone from the DFJ? Mr. Lam. This is a mandatory requirement by law. Now, if the benefit goes beyond that, then it's a matter of agreement between the employer and the employee. So under the employment ordinance, the maximum PL is 3 days. Now, whatever goes beyond that is a matter of contract or agreement between the employer and employee. Well, I am not focusing on up to. I just want to make it clear and clean, and that is 3 days. Now, of course, the employers can give more than 3 days, and 3 days are the minimum. So in that case, why shouldn't we be just saying 3 days, and rather than up to 3 days? Are the two words up to superfluous? Well, if you don't want to answer now, perhaps you can consider and then give us a response next time, because many members have raised this question already. Actually, in our written response, there are scenarios where an employee is not entitled to 3 days, and the bill has to take care of every kind of scenario, because for some employees, they are entitled to say just 1 to 2 days and not 3 days. But you said that you can't really allow for payment in lieu of leave. Does it mean that the employee says that I don't want to take 3 days, and then that is a situation where employee is taking less than 3 days? Well, there are indeed scenarios where an employee is not entitled to 3 days, because our requirement is that the PL has to be taken the latest by the end of the 10th week after the child is born. And also the employee has to meet with the continuous contract requirement, i.e., the employer has to be working for 4 weeks for the employer and for more than 18 hours a week. And that is what we meant by continuous contract. Say, if the employee joins a company after the baby is born for more than 5 weeks, after he has worked for 4 weeks in the company, and then he will be only to meet the continuous contract requirement on the 9th week. So within that, the 10th week requirement after the child is born, then there are just only 1 to 2 days left. So that means that he can enjoy only, or he's entitled to only 1 to 2 PL days. So the way it is written is really to take care of the scenario that I mentioned.
Helena Wong, we are now in clause-by-clause scrutiny. I'm sorry, I had to go to another meeting. Now, up to 3 days. Now on this, now you added the words up to, and then the officials explain it. Now the Democratic Party is already discontented with there being only 3 days, and now we have not even 3 days. Up to 3 days. 0 is up to 3 days. So you won't even let us have 3 days. And you also said that the employee may not be employed long enough to enjoy it. But it's the same for maternity leave. There is also a situation there where the employee has not served long enough. So is it the same for maternity leave? So the person has less than the entitled leave? But you didn't say use the wording up to. But how is it that you have the wording up to here in paternity leave so that people don't even get 3 days? So people will be disappointed, members as well as the public. So are you saying that 0 to 3 is okay? So in the end, many people will end up with 0 or even 0 or 1 day. Is there double standard for maternity leave and paternity leave? the maternity leave, there's no wording that says up to 10 weeks. Now, there's a distinction from ML. Now, in ML also, there has to be a continuous contract. She must be employed for 4 weeks. That is counting from the first day of maternity leave. The difference between ML and PL is that maternity leave is 4 weeks before the expected confinement, up to 10 weeks after birth. Now, if she hasn't served for the hasn't met the 4-week requirement, she doesn't even get 1 day's leave. But for paternity leave, now he has to have served 4 weeks. The person has to have served a certain period of time, and then he would enjoy the PL. In ML, there is no partial leave, so she either enjoys the 10 months or 10 weeks or no ML at all. Whereas for PL, now he may not get the full 3 days, but he may get 1 or 2 days if he joins the company very late. But in maternity leave, if the person joins the company after the baby is born, then the woman will not get even 1 day's maternity leave. So if the woman is to enjoy maternity leave, she has to join the company at least 8 weeks before the baby's birth. But for PL, the employee can enjoy the leave even if he joins the company, say, 5 weeks after the baby is born. So in that respect, PL is more lenient, more generous. Kwok Wai Keung. Now, we have all along wanted PL with pay. Now, if there is going to be PL, you have to now it has to be 4 weeks of continuous contract. Now, Mr. Hui is causing confusion. He is talking about PL without pay. So you are confusing us. It's very simple, 3 days. But how come you are making it so confusing? Now, if it's PL without pay, then it's just casual leave. Then the employer can approve or not as he pleases. Now, you are saying that PL is to be allowed, but maybe it's without pay. Now, many members are saying that the words "up to" is superfluous. You should just say 3 days. Of course, we are talking about PL with pay, but if it's PL without pay, then there can always be special cases. Is there such a need to keep the goal? Now, the requirement of 4 weeks of continuous contract, that's the same as for ML. But if the woman has to get ML with pay. She has to have served for 40 weeks. That is as the same as for PL. So we try to cover all the situations. We don't want the legislation to be deficient. So there are cases where some employers get leave up to for the full 3 days, but others do not. Ms. Encha, you have a question to ask? I agree with Mr. Kwok because our amendment is mainly about paternity leave with pay, pay at the rate of 4/5. Now, if it's PL without pay, then it's just taking leave. One can take leave whether it's for childbirth or for whatever reason. So you are saying that you offer PL with 4/5 pay for 3 days. Now, so I think you should be more clear. Whether it's with pay or without pay, we need to stipulate it clearly because PL is different from other types of leave, whether it's without pay or with pay. When the employee requests it, the employer must give him PL. Even if without leave, if the employee so requests and has served notice, the employer cannot reject him. Otherwise, he breaks the law. So whether it's with pay or without pay, we have to put it clearly in writing the number of days. Now, let me explain again. Why are there some cases where paternity leave is only for 1 or 2 days? Because the requirement for PL is that the employee has to take all 3 days of PL 10 weeks after the baby is within 10 weeks after the baby is born. And if the person is to enjoy PL, he must have been employed 4 weeks of continuous contract, 18 hours per week. So, for example, if the employee joins the company over 5 weeks, but less than 6 weeks after the baby is born, then he has to work for 4 weeks before he has a continuous contract. So after 4 weeks, the baby has been born for 9+ weeks, then there is a continuous contract and he can enjoy PL. But by that time, the 10 weeks will expire, but for 1 or 2 days. Perhaps if he joins the company that late, he enjoys PL, but he is only entitled to 1 or 2 days because there are only 1 or 2 days left to that 10-week period. And the bill tries to accommodate that situation, so that's why we have the wording up to 3 days. Perhaps we can listen to the legal advisor on the long title. Now, we've heard Mr. Hui explain about the wording up to 3 days, but members can consider this. Now, just now, Mr. Hui's explanation, now that's already very clear in the provisions of the bill. Do we need to put that in the long title? Because in the long title, we try to explain the purpose of the legislation in very general terms. We don't have to be very specific. So as the chairman said, do we need to include wording like up to or not more than? Now, if it's a general expression, then we don't need 3 days to state 3 days and 4/5 of wages. We can just say one needs to provide paternity leave. So the purpose is only to provide paternity leave and paternity pay. Ms. Chang, so the employer has to provide leave but without pay. Now, what kind of leave would that be? Now, for instance, statutory holidays. To enjoy statutory holidays, one has to have served for 3 months in a continuous contract. But if he has joined the company only recently, then the company will still let the employee enjoy statutory holiday, but he will not have the statutory pay. You mean the Christmas holidays like Christmas? Yes, the labor holidays. So he has to have served 3 months in a continuous contract before he can enjoy holiday pay. But whether there is a continuous contract, the holidays have to be offered. Now, we agree. I agree with the legal advisor, because if you put in the wording up to 3 days in the long title, then the detailed provisions will spell out that the rights will be for up to 3 days. So it's like annual leave up to 14 days. So there are arrangements there too for leave up to 14 days. So I don't think we need to use detailed wording like up to 3 days.
So in the detailed provisions, you can include all the details relating to pay or no pay for PL taken. Now, if you write that down like this, it will trigger more labor disputes, because people will be having all sorts of argument on this long title. Mr. Hui, response from you? As I understand it, the long title will not be part of the amendment bill or the bill to be enacted. In Section 15E, or rather 15D, 15D bracket 2 bracket B, similar wordings are there. So the employers and employees should refer to Section 15D to B, and the long title will not appear in the ordinance. Again, up to 3 days and not more than 3 days. Is there a difference there? Mr. Lam. Section 15D to B is not more than 3 days, and the long title reflects the provisions, and it uses a generalized expression here in the long title. Should there be changes to the long title? I think the long title reflects the provisions. Now, we shouldn't be just changing the long title and not the corresponding provisions within the bill. Dr. Helena Wong, I would like to clarify if members move an amendment to remove the number of days, not more than, and the pay, and so on, would the long title be changed correspondingly? So it means that the way the long title is written will not be limiting the way the members are moving CSAs. The members' question has to do with priorities. I think we have to amend first the detailed provisions in the bill first, and if that amendment necessitates a change in the long title, then the corresponding change will be made in the long title after the scrutiny exercise. So does it mean that without amending the long title, we can't move the amendment, right? Yes. Well, thank you very much for your clarification. I would like to learn more. The PL involves two issues. First, the number of PL days. Second is pay or no pay. Another complicated factor is one which you remind members that a male employee has to serve for 40 weeks before he is entitled to pay PL. Failing that, according to the official, he is still entitled to PL without pay. Is that correct? But the bottom line is that you still have to work in that company for 4 weeks, whether it is before the child is born or after the child is born. PL is granted, but then without pay. And it may be 3 days or 1 day or 2 days. Is my understanding correct, Mr. Hui? For entitlement of PL, the male employee has to have served on a continuous contract. In other words, for 4 weeks, 18 hours per week. And that is no pay, right? If he wants paid PL, he should have served 40 weeks before the PL is taken, and that is consistent with ML arrangements. In the provisions, have you made it clear that if the male employer has served for 4 weeks, what is his entitlement? 3 days, 2 days, or 1 day? How do you make the calculation? Or is it at the sole discretion of the employer, who can say, I just give you 1 day of leave? Are there ambiguities in the draft provisions? Can you take us through the relevant provisions in the bill? The number of days. 15D, bracket 2, bracket B, is entitled to take leave for not more than 3 days for each confinement. 15D says that if the male employer has made the notification, 15G, or rather, so you're talking about 15G. 15G outlines the circumstances where he is entitled to PL pay, i.e. he has been employed of not less than 40 weeks and has complied with all the requirements in Section 15I or 15G. No, Chairman, he hasn't answered my question. Now, if he has not served for 40 weeks, so his PL comes without pay. Say if a male employee has served for 6 weeks or 5 weeks, i.e. he is serving a period between 4 weeks and 40 weeks, say from 4 weeks to 39 weeks for male employees. Does it mean that his PL is without pay? So in that circumstance, is he entitled to 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days PL? Is it the case that the bill doesn't have any guidelines on that, and it is really at the sole discretion of the employer. I think the question is very clear as I understand it. If you have served 4 weeks only at the end of the 10 week after you have given birth to a child, say if you meet the requirement on the 5th day after of the 10th week, so there may be a possibility that the male employee is not entitled to the full 3-day PL days, because you must take the leave within the end of the 10 weeks after your child is born. Well, Chairman, I don't think you get my question. I'm not talking about the notification period. I'm not on notification period either. Well, notification period is one thing, but then I'm also talking about 1, 2, or 3 days entitlement. Now, you have to take the leave within 10 weeks after the child is born. Say there may be a scenario when the male employee is at the end of the 10-week period when he wishes to take the PL days. Well, I think we have been very lenient on setting the 10-week rule. I think the objective of the PL is to enable male employees to take leave to take care of the mother and also the newborn child. So the world around, there is also a time limit or the period limit to the PL taken. Now, if he is taking it too late, then it will not be able to achieve the objective of the PL. Now, 4-10 rule is more lenient than the 4-6 weeks rule for the mothers. Now, that's not what I understand it to be the case, because there is no longer the limit for the mothers in ML. There is no strict requirement on 4 weeks before conception. The legislation has the requirement that the leave must be taken 4 weeks prior to the date of confinement. And if the employer requests it and the employer accedes to it, the request, and then it can be changed to 2 weeks prior to the confinement date. Well, there is, of course, a scenario where there is premature birth. And before the mother takes any leave, she has already given birth to the child. So the leave she is entitled starts from the date of confinement. So that's why we have this 10-week rule. We want to make it as most lenient as possible. So he should be taking the leave. I mean, the male employer should be taking the leave from the period 4 weeks before the confinement date up to the 10 weeks after the confinement date. I think this is a more lenient approach, and it's similar to the arrangement for ML. Dr. Helena Wong's question, 1, 2, and 3 days. The way it is calculated, well, only the lawyers will know how the bill operates, and it's very incomprehensible to the layman. So would there be a detailed provision stipulating clearly under what circumstances will the male employee be granted 1 day or 2 days? There is only one bill, and in implementation, actually, there may be more scenarios than what we can envisage. Now that the member has this question, now after the bill is enacted, we can cite some examples in the future guidelines to be drawn up so that the employers have a better understanding of how it works. When we apply the bill or the ordinance, well, there may be all sorts of scenarios, and we can't be exhaustive in a drafting of the bill. Mr. Hui. Well, the long title is sparking so many debates. Shouldn't it be written so in such a clumsy way? Can you do it in a more concise manner? This is an opinion. Please consider it. Mr. Chen Yinhan, do you have a question? I've been working on labor rights for a long time. I think Mr. Hui sounds so very confusing. Now, 4-6 rule for the pregnant mother, and then 9 weeks is also allowed. Now, according to Yi, you said that the male employee has to give prior notification at least 2 days before the leave day is taken, and then also 3 months in advance that you're going to take PEL. Now, if the mother gives birth, well, 3 months prior to the confinement date, what will happen? The legislation requires that the employee should give notice 3 months prior to the expected confinement date, and that is all right. The confinement date is stated in the medical record or the doctor's certificate, right? Yes. So we will go by the confinement date stated in the doctor's certificate. And if he can give notice 3 months prior to the confinement date, then he is deemed to have complied with the relevant provision. Now, if the child is born earlier, then he can still take PL, provided he gives 2 days advance notice for taking the leave. Now, say in the case where the doctor notifies a couple of the confinement date, and then the male employee can notify the employer of this confinement date. Now, can you use that date as a starting point and then protect the employee from dismissal by the employer?
Now, our thinking is that the case for woman is different from that of the male, because the woman gets pregnant, so we offer her protection. I understand you have explained that, but what I mean is, now you use 3 months, so it's based on the expected confinement, so you can offer protection that the employee cannot be fired. Now, you say that the employers are not bad now, but in fact they may be very bad at heart. Now, I am already offering the wife for 10 weeks leave, and I don't want to offer this leave to the husband, so I will fire him. Now, why do we try to offer protection to the employer or to the employee? Now, we have to look at the probability. Now, 3 months, that's the minimum. Now, as long as the wife or partner has been certified to be pregnant, he can already make the request. Now, why can't you offer the protection to the male employee on the basis of the 3 months? Now, on employee protection, we have to look at the actual need. There are many other holidays, arrangements. Now, we don't stipulate that because the employee is entitled to leave, then there's a period during which he cannot be fired. you know, the administration is very much behind the curve. Now allowances are being offered to those who look after the elderly. So what has it got to do with the employer? Now, if you have a requirement of 3 months, then you offer the employee protection. When he takes paternity leave, he will not be discriminated against. Now, Ms. Chen Yun-han, this question has been raised for over 10 times by members. Now, since the 3 months is determined to be fair, why? Well, carers are offered subsidies, so why can't you offer the same to the husband? Now, if the employer discriminates against the male employee because of paternity leave, then it's against the existing legislation, and the existing legislation already offers protection. Now, why are you discriminating against the husband? There is there is already the family status discrimination ordinance. Well, we have to end this meeting soon. Maybe we should complete part 1 first. Ms. Cheng, thank you. Now, Article 1 stipulates the short title and the commencement. 第一步呢個導言呢係關於簡稱同埋生效日期。本條例可引稱為2014年僱傭修訂條例。本條例自勞工及福利局局長以憲報公告指定嘅日期起實施。Thank you. So, members have asked Mr. Hui many questions today, including the CSA issue, how you are going to seek the views of LAB. So there are issues that you have to go back and discuss. So next time at the next meeting, apart from clause-by-clause scrutiny, we will also discuss these issues. Then it will be 25th of June, 8:30 a.m.